In the year 2147, humanity had reached farther into the cosmos than ever before, but it was not exploration or scientific discovery that defined this era. It was survival. Earth's resources were depleted, its ecosystems fractured beyond repair, and billions lived in sprawling megacities under artificial skies. The United Earth Coalition, UEC, governed what remained of civilization with an iron fist, prioritizing efficiency over ethics, progress over people. It was within this fragile world that Captain Elias Drake found himself stationed aboard the UEC starship Aegis, tasked with patrolling the outer rim of known space, a region fraught with mystery and danger. Elias was a man shaped by loss. Once a celebrated pilot in the UEC fleet, he had risen through the ranks on sheer skill and determination. But his life changed forever during the siege of Epsilon 9, when a surprise attack from an unknown alien force obliterated his home colony. He lost everything: his family, his friends, his sense of purpose, and since then, he carried a weight heavier than any medal or accolade could ever balance. Though outwardly stoic, Elias harbored a deep-seated anger toward anything extraterrestrial, viewing all non-human life as potential threats to be neutralized. The crew of the Aegis respected him for his tactical brilliance, but kept their distance due to his cold demeanor. Among them was Lieutenant Mira Solis, the ship's chief science officer, whose optimism often clashed with Elias's cynicism. She believed in diplomacy and understanding, even when faced with beings vastly different from humans. Then there was Commander Arlen Voss, the pragmatic second-in-command who served as both mediator and strategist. Together, they formed a team capable of navigating the unpredictable dangers of deep space, but none of them could have anticipated what awaited them beyond the edge of the galaxy. It began with a signal, a faint, rhythmic pulse emanating from a distant nebula shrouded in swirling violet clouds. At first, the crew dismissed it as cosmic interference, but Mira insisted otherwise. Her instruments detected patterns too precise to be natural, suggesting intelligent design. Against his better judgment, Elias ordered the Aegis to investigate, driven more by duty than curiosity. As they approached the source of the transmission, the ship sensors revealed something extraordinary. A massive structure floating amidst the gas clouds, its surface shimmering like liquid metal under the dim light of dying stars. The closer they got, the more surreal the scene became. The structure seemed alive, shifting and pulsating as if breathing. Its architecture defied logic, with impossible angles and flowing curves that made it seem less like a construct and more like some kind of organic entity frozen in time. Mira marveled at the readings flooding her console, her voice tinged with awe. "Captain, this is unlike anything we've ever encountered. It's emitting energy signatures consistent with quantum entanglement fields. This isn't just technology, it's advanced biology fused with machinery." Elias clenched his jaw, his hand hovering near the weapon controls. "Or a trap," he muttered, scanning the view screen for signs of movement. "Stay sharp, everyone. If this thing can think, it might already know we're here." As if in response, the structure suddenly shifted, unfolding like a flower blooming in slow motion. A beam of light shot out, enveloping the Aegis in a warm, golden glow. Alarms blared across the bridge as systems flickered and rebooted, but no damage was detected. Instead, a voice filled the air, not through speakers, but directly inside their minds. It was melodic yet commanding, resonating with an otherworldly authority. "Humans," it said, each word dripping with both curiosity and disdain. "You trespass where you do not belong." Before anyone could react, the ship jolted violently as if caught in an invisible grip. On the view screen, the structure opened further, revealing a cavernous interior illuminated by bioluminescent hues. Without warning, the Aegis was pulled inside, swallowed whole by the alien construct. Darkness enveloped them momentarily before the lights returned, revealing a chamber so vast it defied comprehension. Towering crystalline spires rose around them, refracting light into dazzling rainbows, while pools of glowing liquid pulsed rhythmically, mimicking the beat of a colossal heart. Mira leaned forward, her eyes wide with wonder. "This place, it's alive. We're inside a living organism." Elias gripped the armrests of his chair, his knuckles white. "Alive or not, we're at its mercy now." Then, from the shadows, she emerged. She descended gracefully, her form materializing as though woven from stardust itself. Her skin shimmered with iridescent tones, shifting between shades of silver and gold, catching the ambient light in ways that defied physics. Her eyes glowed softly, twin galaxies swirling within their depths, drawing every gaze inexorably toward her. Her hair flowed like liquid mercury, cascading down her back in waves that seemed to ripple with their own inner energy. She wore garments, or perhaps extensions of her very being, that appeared to be crafted from threads of pure light, draping over her lithe frame in patterns that shifted and danced as she moved. The alien queen exuded an aura of power so palpable it felt like a physical force pressing against the crew. Each step she took resonated through the chamber, not with sound but with a vibration that echoed in their bones, as if the very fabric of reality bent to accommodate her presence. She stopped several paces away, tilting her head slightly as though studying them with detached fascination. When she spoke, her voice reverberated not only in their ears but also in their thoughts, layered with harmonics that evoked both awe and unease. "You are human," she declared, her tone carrying a mixture of curiosity and condescension. "Fragile creatures of flesh and fleeting ambition. Your kind has ventured far, yet your understanding remains shallow. Tell me, why do you come here?" Elias straightened, his posture rigid despite the overwhelming sensation of insignificance washing over him. "We received a signal," he replied, his voice steady but edged with caution. "We didn't mean to intrude. We're explorers, seeking knowledge." Her lips curved into a smile that was neither warm nor comforting. Instead, it held an unsettling quality, as though she found amusement in their feeble attempts at justification. "Explorers?" she echoed, her voice laced with mockery. "No, Captain Elias Drake. You are scavengers, picking at the edges of greatness you cannot comprehend. And now, you stand before me, trapped within my domain." Mira stepped forward hesitantly, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. "If you'll allow us, we'd like to learn about you. About this place. Perhaps we can find common ground." The queen cut her off with a wave of her hand, and the gesture alone silenced the room. "Common ground? Do you presume equality between us? I am HFY, sovereign of the Syntherian Accord, ruler of realms you cannot fathom. Your objections are useless, human. You will be mine." The words hung heavy in the air, dripping with finality. Before anyone could respond, tendrils of light erupted from the floor, snaking toward the crew with unnatural speed. They wrapped around Elias's arms and legs, lifting him effortlessly off the ground. His struggles were futile, the bindings tightened without causing harm, holding him suspended like a specimen awaiting examination. Panic surged through him, but he forced himself to remain composed, glaring at Zyratican with unyielding defiance. "What do you want from us?" he demanded, his voice strained but resolute. Zyratican tilted her head again, her expression unreadable. "Want? No, Captain. Need. Your species holds untapped potential, raw materials for my designs. You will serve a greater purpose, one you cannot yet understand." Mira lunged forward, shouting, "No! Let him go!" But another tendril shot out, halting her advance mid-step. She stumbled back, her face pale with terror. Zeratan regarded her coolly, her luminous eyes narrowing. "Bravery suits you poorly, little scientist," she said, her tone icy. "You would do well to remember your place." Commander Voss stepped up beside Mira, his hand resting on the hilt of his sidearm. "Let them go or we'll fight our way out," he warned, his voice low and measured. Zyratan laughed, a sound that was both beautiful and chilling. "Fight? Against me? Oh, how quaint. Very well, let us see what your primitive instincts are worth." With a snap of her fingers, the chamber transformed. Walls dissolved into darkness, replaced by towering constructs of shifting geometry. The crew found themselves standing on a platform suspended above an abyss, its depths illuminated by faint, pulsating lights. Around them, shadowy figures began to take shape, Syntherian warriors, their forms sleek and predatory, weapons humming with latent energy. Elias struggled against his restraints, watching helplessly as his crew prepared for battle. "Stand down," he barked, his voice cutting through the tension. "We don't know what we're dealing with." But it was too late. One of the warriors lunged, and chaos erupted. The battle unfolded with terrifying swiftness. Syntherian warriors moved with fluid grace, their movements almost hypnotic as they closed in on the crew. Energy blades crackled to life, casting eerie reflections on the metallic surfaces of the chamber. Commander Voss fired his plasma pistol, the bolt striking one of the attackers square in the chest. But instead of falling, the creature absorbed the impact, its body rippling like water before reforming seamlessly. Mira screamed as another warrior grabbed her arm, yanking her backward, but she managed to twist free, stumbling toward the edge of the platform. Elias thrashed against his restraints, veins bulging with effort as he shouted orders to his crew. "Fall back. Regroup." His words were drowned out by the cacophony of clashing weapons and guttural roars. Lieutenant Solis scrambled to retrieve a fallen disruptor rifle, her hands trembling as she aimed at one of the advancing figures. The shot missed, ricocheting off a crystalline pillar and sending shards flying in all directions. Sparks rained down as the warriors pressed forward, their glowing eyes locking onto their prey with predatory precision. From her vantage point above the fray, Zyrat HFY observed the chaos with detached amusement. Her shimmering form radiated an aura of calm superiority, untouched by the violence below. She raised a slender hand, and the air around her crackled with energy. With a single gesture, she unleashed a wave of force that sent several of the crew tumbling to the ground. Their weapons skittered across the platform, leaving them defenseless. "Enough," she intoned, her voice resonating with authority. "Your resistance is futile." One of the warriors seized Commander Voss by the throat, lifting him effortlessly into the air. Voss clawed at the creature's grip, his face reddening as he gasped for breath. Zernan approached him slowly, her glowing eyes narrowing as she studied his desperate struggle. "You cling to life so fiercely," she mused, her tone almost contemplative. "Yet you squander it on such meaningless acts of defiance." She turned to address the rest of the crew, her voice rising to fill the chamber. "Witness the futility of your efforts. You are insects beneath my heel, incapable of comprehending the grand design." Elias roared in fury, straining against the tendrils that bound him. "Leave them alone," he bellowed, veins throbbing in his neck. Zardun glanced at him briefly, her lips curling into a cruel smile. "Ah, Captain Drake. Still so protective of your fragile companions. How quaint." She gestured lazily, and the warrior holding Voss tightened its grip. The commander's struggles grew weaker, his limbs going limp as consciousness slipped away. Mira, tears streaming down her face, crawled toward one of the discarded weapons. Her fingers brushed against its cold surface just as a shadow loomed over her. A Syntherian warrior pinned her to the ground, its claws pressing against her throat. She whimpered, her wide eyes meeting Elias's as she mouthed a silent plea for help. The captain's heart pounded in his chest, his mind racing for a way to turn the tide. But Zaratun's laughter echoed through the chamber, drowning out any hope of escape. "This is your fate," she declared, her voice dripping with finality. "To kneel before me and accept your role in my ascension. Resist, and you will perish. Submit, and you may yet survive." Elias gritted his teeth, his mind racing with conflicting emotions. Anger burned within him, a fire fueled by the sight of his crew being subdued and humiliated. Yet beneath the rage lay a gnawing sense of helplessness, a stark reminder of his inability to protect those who depended on him. Zaratun's words echoed in his mind, taunting him with their inevitability. Resistance seemed pointless against a being so far beyond human comprehension, yet submission felt like betrayal, not just to himself, but to the ideals he once fought for. Myra's tear-streaked face flashed in his memory, her desperate plea haunting him. She represented everything he had sworn to defend: hope, curiosity, the relentless pursuit of understanding. To surrender now would be to extinguish that flame forever. But what choice did he have? The Syntherian warriors stood ready to strike at a moment's notice, their glowing weapons poised to end lives in an instant. Even if he somehow broke free, what could he possibly achieve against such overwhelming odds? His thoughts turned inward, dredging up memories of the siege of Epsilon 9, the day he lost everything. He had vowed never to feel powerless again, to always be the one in control. Yet here he was, bound and at the mercy of an alien queen whose motives were as enigmatic as her power. Was this fate's cruel joke? Or was it a test, forcing him to confront the limits of his strength and resolve? Zernan's voice cut through his turmoil, smooth and deliberate. I see the conflict within you, Captain. It is admirable, in a way. So much passion, so much defiance. But tell me, does it serve you now? Does it save them? She gestured toward the crew, her expression unreadable. You are but a single thread in the tapestry of existence, easily unraveled. Why waste your fleeting moments on futile gestures? Elias clenched his jaw, his chest heaving with suppressed emotion. For a brief moment, doubt crept in. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps resistance truly was meaningless. But then he remembered the look in Myra's eyes. Not fear, but determination. She hadn't given up, even when faced with certain doom. And neither could he. Summoning every ounce of courage, Elias locked eyes with HFY. You can take our freedom, he growled, his voice raw with conviction. But you'll never break our spirit. Whatever you plan, whatever twisted purpose you envision, know this, humanity will rise against you. We always do. The alien queen tilted her head, her glowing eyes narrowing slightly. There was a flicker of something in her expression. Curiosity, perhaps, or irritation. Bold words, she murmured, stepping closer until she towered over him. But bravery alone cannot alter destiny. You are mine now, Captain. Accept it. Before Elias could respond, a low rumble shook the chamber. The crystalline spires trembled, their luminescence flickering erratically. Zaridan turned sharply, her composure faltering for the first time. What is this? She demanded, her voice sharp with alarm. The crew exchanged bewildered glances as the ground beneath them quaked violently. From the depths of the abyss below, a new presence stirred, a force ancient and primal, awakening to challenge the Queen's dominion. The quaking intensified, sending shockwaves through the chamber that reverberated in the crew's bones. Crystalline shards rained down from the spires above, shattering against the platform in bursts of light. Zaridan's luminous form flickered momentarily, her composure cracking as she turned toward the abyss. Her glowing eyes widened, and for the first time, Elias glimpsed uncertainty in her expression, a fleeting vulnerability that fueled his resolve. What is this? She repeated, her voice rising with an edge of panic. The air around her shimmered erratically, as though her control over the environment was slipping. From the depths below, a low, guttural growl emerged, a sound so primal it seemed to resonate with the very fabric of existence. It wasn't just noise, it was a challenge, a declaration of defiance that sent chills coursing through everyone present. Elias strained against his restraints once more, his muscles burning with exertion. Looks like you're not the only one calling the shots here, he spat, his tone laced with grim satisfaction. Zaridan shot him a venomous glare but said nothing, her attention fully consumed by whatever was stirring beneath them. Mira, still pinned to the ground by the Syntherian warrior, managed to crane her neck enough to peer into the abyss. Her breath caught in her throat. At first, there was only darkness, an endless void stretching into infinity. But then, shapes began to emerge. Massive, serpentine forms coiling and writhing like living shadows. Their scales glinted faintly, reflecting the dim light of the chamber, and their eyes burned with an inner fire that seemed to pierce straight through the soul. Those aren't machines, Mira whispered, her voice trembling. They're alive. Ancient. Predatory. She turned her gaze to HFY, whose regal demeanor had dissolved into something far more primal. The alien queen raised both hands, summoning tendrils of golden energy that crackled and sparked around her. Yet even as she prepared to confront the emerging threat, her movements betrayed hesitation, a stark contrast to the unshakable confidence she had displayed moments before. Commander Voss groaned weakly, regaining consciousness just as the largest of the shadowy creatures broke free from the abyss. Its massive head rose high above the platform, revealing rows of jagged teeth and a maw wide enough to swallow the entire crew whole. The creature let out another deafening roar, shaking loose chunks of crystalline debris from the ceiling. Syntherian warriors scrambled to maintain order, their weapons trained on the beast, but their usual precision faltered under the weight of sheer terror. "This changes nothing," Zaridan shouted, her voice amplified to drown out the chaos. She thrust her arms forward, unleashing a torrent of energy that slammed into the creature's chest. The impact sent it reeling backward, but instead of collapsing, it retaliated with a swipe of its colossal tail. The blow struck the platform with devastating force, splitting it in two and sending several Syntherian warriors tumbling into the abyss. Elias felt the platform tilt dangerously beneath him, the tendrils binding him loosening slightly as the structure destabilized. Seizing the opportunity, he twisted violently, managing to wrench one arm free. Pain shot through his shoulder, but adrenaline dulled the sensation. With renewed determination, he reached for the nearest fallen weapon, a plasma blade discarded during the earlier skirmish. His fingers brushed against its hilt just as another tremor rocked the chamber, nearly dislodging him entirely. "Captain!" Mira cried out, finally breaking free from the distracted warrior who had been holding her down. She scrambled across the fractured platform, dodging falling debris as she made her way toward Elias. Behind her, Commander Voss staggered to his feet, clutching his side where the Syntherian's grip had left deep bruises. Together, they formed a ragged line of resistance, united by desperation and the faint hope that survival might still be possible. HFY, meanwhile, fought furiously against the encroaching horde of shadowy beasts. Each strike she unleashed was devastating, capable of rending steel and shattering stone, yet the creatures absorbed her attacks with eerie resilience. They moved with predatory grace, circling her like wolves closing in on prey. One lunged at her, jaws snapping shut mere inches from her face, forcing her to teleport away in a burst of light. When she reappeared, her once pristine form was marred by cracks of darkness spreading across her skin like veins of corruption. "You dare defy me!" she screamed, her voice now tinged with desperation. She hurled another wave of energy, this time targeting not just the creatures but also the crumbling architecture of the chamber itself. Massive sections of the ceiling collapsed, burying several of the beasts under tons of rubble. But for every one she destroyed, two more emerged from the abyss, their numbers seemingly endless. Elias finally freed himself completely, clutching the plasma blade tightly in his hand. He glanced at Mira and Voss, nodding sharply. "We need to get out of here," he said, his voice cutting through the din now. "But how?" Mira asked, her voice trembling. "The ship." "We'll find a way," Elias interrupted, his gaze locking onto Zarathustra. "She brought us here. There has to be a way back." As if hearing his words, Zarathustra turned her blazing eyes toward him. Despite the chaos unfolding around her, she managed to summon a cruel smile. "You think escape is an option, human? This is my domain. My prison. And now, it is yours as well." Before Elias could respond, the largest of the shadowy creatures surged forward, its massive body slamming into the remnants of the platform. The impact sent everyone sprawling, including HFY herself. For a brief moment, the alien queen disappeared beneath a cascade of rubble, her cries of fury muffled by the cacophony of destruction. Elias seized the opportunity, grabbing Myra's arm and pulling her toward what remained of the exit corridor. Voss followed close behind, limping but determined. As they fled, the sounds of battle faded into the distance, replaced by the ominous rumble of the collapsing chamber. The walls around them pulsed erratically, their bioluminescent glow dimming with each passing second. "We can't leave without knowing what we're dealing with," Mira insisted, her scientist's instincts overriding her fear. "If these creatures are hostile to her, maybe." "No," Elias snapped, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Our priority is getting back to the Aegis. If we don't make it out of here, none of this matters." Behind them, the rumbling grew louder, accompanied by the unmistakable sound of pursuit. The shadowy beasts were coming. The corridor ahead was a labyrinth of shifting geometry, its walls pulsating with erratic rhythms as though the structure itself was alive and in pain. The trio sprinted through the narrow passages, their footsteps echoing against the organic surfaces. Mira stumbled once, her boots sliding on the slick, vein-like patterns that crisscrossed the floor, but Elias caught her arm and yanked her forward without missing a stride. "We're running out of time," Voss shouted from behind them, his voice strained as he clutched his side. His face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead, but he pushed onward, driven by sheer willpower. Behind them, the growls of the shadowy creatures grew louder, reverberating through the tunnels like rolling thunder. The air thickened with an acrid stench, metallic and sharp, making it hard to breathe. Elias glanced over his shoulder just in time to see one of the beasts burst into view at the end of the corridor. Its massive form filled the space, forcing the walls to stretch and warp around it. Its glowing eyes locked onto them, and it let out a deafening roar before charging forward with terrifying speed. "Move!" Elias barked, shoving Mira ahead of him. He turned briefly, raising the plasma blade and firing a concentrated beam of energy at the creature's head. The shot struck true, carving a deep gash across its snout, but the beast barely slowed. It roared again, angrier now, its claws tearing chunks out of the walls as it barreled toward them. Mira spotted a branching tunnel to their left and pointed frantically. "There. That way," she yelled, her voice cracking under the strain. Without hesitation, Elias veered sharply, dragging her along as Voss followed close behind. The new path sloped downward steeply, leading deeper into the alien construct, but it was narrower, too small for the hulking predator to follow. The creature slammed into the entrance of the tunnel, shaking the entire passage. Rocks tumbled from above, narrowly missing them as they pressed onward. The sounds of pursuit faded slightly, replaced by the ominous creaking of the structure around them. They were running blind, guided only by instinct and desperation. After what felt like an eternity, they emerged into a vast chamber eerily similar to the one where they had first encountered HFY. This room, however, was darker, its bioluminescent glow dimmed to a faint flicker. In the center stood a crystalline obelisk, pulsating with a soft blue light. Surrounding it were fragments of shattered machinery, remnants of some ancient technology long abandoned. This must be how we got here," Mira said, panting as she approached the obelisk. Her hands hovered over its surface, tracing the intricate carvings etched into the crystal. "It's a gateway, a quantum entanglement device. If we can reactivate it—" "No time for theories," Elias interrupted, his eyes scanning the edges of the chamber. "Do whatever you need to do, but do it fast." As if on cue, the ground trembled violently, and the distant roar of the shadowy beasts echoed through the tunnels. They weren't far behind. Voss leaned heavily against a nearby pillar, his breathing labored. "I'll hold them off," he rasped, drawing his plasma pistol. "Get us home." Elias hesitated, torn between gratitude and guilt. "Arlen." "No arguments," Voss snapped, his tone firm despite his condition. "You two are our best chance. Go." Reluctantly, Elias nodded, turning back to Mira. She worked furiously at the obelisk, her fingers flying over its surface as she deciphered its mechanisms. The crystal began to hum, vibrating with increasing intensity as power surged through it. A portal opened slowly, shimmering with the same golden light that had enveloped the Aegis earlier. "They're coming!" Voss shouted, firing blindly down the tunnel as the first of the creatures appeared. Their glowing eyes reflected off the walls, casting eerie shadows that danced across the chamber. "Almost there," Mira cried, her voice trembling with exertion. With a final burst of energy, the portal stabilized, revealing a swirling vortex of stars and light. "Go," Elias ordered, grabbing Myra's arm and pulling her toward the gateway. She resisted for a moment, tears streaming down her face as she looked back at Voss. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. Voss smiled weakly, raising his weapon as the creatures closed in. "Tell my family I didn't go down easy." Elias didn't give her time to respond. He shoved her through the portal, following immediately after. The last thing he saw before the light consumed them was Voss standing tall, firing relentlessly into the horde, his silhouette illuminated by the chaos. When they emerged on the other side, they found themselves back aboard the Aegis. The ship's alarms blared, warning systems flashing red as the crew scrambled to regain control. Outside the view screen, the alien construct loomed ominously, its surface writhing with activity as the battle within raged on. Mira collapsed to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Elias knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. For once, his usual stoicism faltered, and he allowed himself a moment of grief, for Voss, for the lives lost, for the horrors they had witnessed. But there was no time to mourn. The ship lurched violently as the alien structure began to destabilize, chunks of it breaking apart and drifting into the void. HFY's voice crackled over the comms, distorted and furious. "You cannot escape me, human. This is not the end." Elias clenched his jaw, his resolve hardening. "Maybe not," he muttered under his breath. "But it's not your victory either." With a final surge of determination, he took command of the bridge, ordering the crew to prepare for emergency departure. As the Aegis pulled away from the collapsing construct, Elias stared out at the swirling debris, his mind racing with questions and plans. They had escaped, but the war was far from over.